Coming at you live. Oh, it's thinking. There we go. Now we're live. I actually have to go and start with a compliment to you, Kim.
Really?
So
Nick,
I've
you
been
never
prospecting all
compliment me.
morning. Don't tell everybody my secrets. I've been prospecting all morning, and I cannot tell you how many CEOs, managing directors, C-suite people take a LinkedIn post from the company page and just share it. Nothing, just share. That's it.
Okay.
And you look
Yeah,
at for
yeah.
like 6 months and it's just
Share.
generic shares. You
Yeah.
always add in your own narrative or your point of view, or you add something to it so it's actually useful and it shows your personality. I
Oh,
didn't realize how it's like an epidemic of like, I don't want to say lazy LinkedIn posting, but lack
well,
of
it
personality. So I
is.
just want to say thank you. I really appreciate it that you do that with the posts, and it stands out way more than I realized. So thank you.
Oh, I like, and you know what? It's something so easy. I think a lot of people could and should do, right? One sentence, right? You don't like it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Like why do you want people to watch that post? And I think if you're a CEO, you're a president, you're even like, the operations manager, you're sharing content, don't just share for the sake of sharing. My company says this is important, so I'm going to share it. Why do you want your clients to read that? What do you hope that they get out of it? Or what action do you want them to take after they've engaged with it? Or maybe they don't engage with it, right? Hey, if this is like affecting you, like, don't forget to direct message me, right? Even just something as simple as that. Just say,
Yeah.
I'm open for a conversation. So, yeah, it is important, isn't it?
But it seems like such a simple thing, and then I've seen well over 50 where they're just shared, and they've been doing that for the past 2 years, and it's like you're trying to comment or like add real value, like, but you didn't add value, and you're wanting me to go in, read like
Yeah.
a 15-minute post to go in. You know where I'm going with
I
this.
I get it. I get it. Like I mean, I do my own when I do my own prospecting. I mean, I always take a look at people's profiles, and first thing is I look at their summary. Maybe I'll scroll a little bit further and look at their job descriptions, but I immediately go into their activity. Right? What activity are they doing? What postings? What comments? What and I agree. It is really hard to start a conversation with somebody that either just likes, Stephen has liked this. Stephen has liked this. And it's like, oh, gee, Steven, like, what am I supposed to say to you? And maybe it's intentional, right? Like maybe you truly like don't want anybody to engage with you. But I like to believe that if you're a CEO, a president, an operations manager, even a salesperson for any of these companies, the reason why you're active on LinkedIn is because somebody said it's going to help you get business. So that's great, but is just showing up helping you to get business? I mean, we've talked about LinkedIn being that networking room. If you show up to the networking room, is that enough? You're like, awesome. I showed up. I hung out for 30 minutes. I didn't talk to anybody.
But
You
Kim,
know,
we went to the
I
trade show.
yeah, I went to the trade show. I saw a speaker. I clapped for them. I said I liked their presentation and I left. Right.
Yeah, here's my discount
Awesome.
code. Thanks for
Yeah,
showing
yeah.
up. Have a
Yeah,
nice day.
fantastic, right? Or did you ask somebody some questions? Did you like connect? I think people have like completely forgotten how to actually converse. And when we lose that conversation, maybe in person, we lose it online. But why not have it just as valuable online as it is in person? Right.
I
Hello,
got a little
Ron.
bit of a
Great to see
chuckle
you.
because I'm like, that kind of leads into another bigger discussion that people
Mm,
hate having.
yeah. Always.
Price. Oh,
Oh.
okay. Actually, could you go start with what you were telling me? Say your example about waiting till the end. It's just too good not to share.
Well, I said, like, because I'm like, when I was in sales, they taught us to like never talk about price. Right. Unless the client is ready to buy, you ignore the price based conversation. And what we were trained to say, and this is terrible when you think about it, we were trained to say if the client ever asks you about price, the only response you should have is like, oh, is that because you're ready to buy now? Like, oh my goodness. Like, no, I just want a piece of information. Like, are we in the ballpark? Am I spending more time with you? Am I not spending more time with you? And I said to you, I said, I have yet to ever see. I said, who's the person that says, oh, I can't wait until the last moment when that sales rep finally shows me the price, because then I will know. That's the moment I will know that I am ready to buy, because as soon as they show me that price, yes, of course. Of course your value is exactly over what I was expecting it in terms of price. It's like, nope. Nope, that doesn't exactly how it works. In the chat here, in the link here, they've actually put in coffee and closers. We're gonna be doing a different event next week. So we're going to be talking about how to connect with people on LinkedIn. So don't forget to join that. We have both a virtual and an in-person environment. And with each one of those, you get a 30-day membership to our workroom, where we're going to have a lot more of these conversations and establish it. But pricing, like, nobody like has ever been excited about like holding on off the price. And I think, was it HubSpot that did a study, and it said like 65% of people want to talk about price in the very first meeting.
I know Gong did as well. They did a one that's only a year or two old, and they were saying that your likelihood of closing actually goes down the longer you wait.
Oh,
And
I could see that.
but I even think about that as a buyer. There's nothing more frustrating when you really want something and you're like, man, I just wish I had a price just so I knew what to save up for, or I could get like ready, or like, put some,
Give me an expectation,
yeah. And then
right?
you
Like,
get to the very end and you're like, oh, like I can't do that for another 6 months or a year because it's just way out from what I was expecting. And
exactly.
they primed me for it to be cheaper, trying to go and do the typical thing, right? And then it like hits you in the, you're like, oh, if you would have just been honest with me, the price didn't, not that the price didn't matter, but I would have been ready for it. And that I would have really been good to go. But
Yeah.
because you primed me for it to be so cheap, or that it was going to be this low cost, and then it comes out,
Yeah.
50% higher, 100% higher, whatever it may be, it's like, then it's hard to trust them. And you
Well, and
can't
then
go back.
the salesperson is all like, goes to their salesman, "Oh, Nick has to like go back to, his internal committee, and go ask about pricing." And it's like, okay, whose fault is that? Right? Is that the customers? Because like when you gave them a price, they should have automatically expected. I think Nick is probably under budget here. I have a feeling that he's probably going to come in at a price that's 30-40% more. So that's what I'm going to go. No, you give me the information, I go back. Like, if you're thinking that your people are having, these external conversations, sorry, well, they're internal, they're external to you. But these internal conversations about what the budget is, what the price is, what the expectations are, when the delivery is, like, you're ridiculous. Like, they're having these conversations, and if you give them something that they completely don't expect, whose fault is that? Is that the
Yeah.
client's or is that yours? And when the sales cycle now becomes stalled, right? Because the client's like, "Well, I have to go back and I have to talk to them about budget and everything, and that's gonna be another month or 2 months." And the salesperson's like, "Oh, I was really outlooking that deal for this month." Whose fault is that?
Yeah.
Right? Is that the clients? Because you gave them bad information. Kristen, in the chat here, is also in agreement that we need to have the ballpark conversation way sooner. You're right. Because when we put ourselves in that buyer's situation, like imagine, it doesn't matter what you're buying, right? Imagine going out and buying it and asking the salesperson, like, what is this going to cost? Like, I've done this several times, whether it's for software, whether it's for rent, whether it's for equipment, like whether it's for a facility for us to host an event. And I will say, okay, like, just give me an idea. Like, what are we looking at in terms of ballpark here? And if it's not, like, if it's not even in the realm, then cool. Thank you very much. Let's save ourselves both time, right?
Yeah.
If it is, or if it's even just a little bit higher than what I was expecting, or it's like unexpected, like that's a lot more, but I really feel that that's the right thing for us to do, then I'm going to continue on that conversation. Right. I've done this. Like, I remember going from one piece, we went from one CRM to another CRM. And the CRM we were spending a lot of money with it, but I'm like, okay, but we need to take a look at like what this possibly looks like going forward. And and then I was like, this is not meeting our needs anymore. So I started shopping around. And I remember asking the salesperson, like, what are we looking at in terms of price? And in a great example, they're like, well, the solution that we probably will be looking at for you, right, or the one that you probably want is going to be this price. The
Mhm.
least cheap one is going to be this, like, but we have an idea. And this was like, I think it was like 5 times more than what I was currently spending. I was like, okay, that's the cost of doing business.
Mhm.
Let's continue on that conversation. And that's the way we need to communicate, not the starting at price. Like, I hate when salespeople tell me the starting at price, because that doesn't tell me what the add-ons on, what the features are, or what my price actually is. We need to communicate it from the high to the low, and we need to set that expectation as quickly as possible. Okay.
That's a good one.
In the chat, we have a couple other things. I know right after this, we're going to be going to our backstage as well. So we'll continue on that conversation. But what else do we have here?
This is a good one. Chandler was saying, or Chander was saying, I apologize. It's best to be transparent with everything, including price, after you've explained your process and services. I was talking about this. You know, when you go to buy something and they tell you the starting price, and then you have to configure your package, like buying a
Yeah.
vehicle or a computer or something.
Yeah.
When I feel, and this is just kind of playing devil's advocate, I feel like when we sell ourselves short, but when you go and list the bottom price, because it's really hard to come anchoring, you can't come back from it easily. You're fighting
Yeah.
that price, but
Yeah.
also you're putting the onus on them to build it.
Yeah.
And the one thing I've really appreciated when somebody goes and takes the time, said, this is probably what you're going to want. This is what it is. But other options start at this and go up to this.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, so there's more options, but you've picked this. Why? And now it's a conversation
Yeah.
instead of like an interrogation.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like one of the things we talk about is, like, number one, like, when should we talk about price? And I think we'll talk about that here in a second. But in terms of, like, setting up pricing expectations, we absolutely need to talk about the full and the comprehensive solution first. Right. Talking about just the starting at and then the building up. Like, I remember working with a graphic designer. How much is this going to cost me? And she quotes me a price. And I'm like, cool, right? Like, make sure, like, and it sounded like a really low price at the time. And so I really wanted to clarify with her. And I'm like, take a look at our files, take a look at everything that we're doing, like, really make sure that that is the price. And we're halfway through the project. And then she comes back to me. She goes, actually, we need to increase your price. And she increased it like double the amount. And I was livid at this point, because now I'm
Mm-hmm.
stuck, right? And now I'm like, I'm paying for something that I'm definitely not going to get what I need, right? And I have to pay more. Now, in this case, I was in a bad situation because I had already invested in the product or service. But
Yeah.
if you're a client, and before you invest in the product and service, if you're setting your value and your expectations that because whenever people say this is the starting price, everyone thinks, awesome, that's me. I'm the
Mm-hmm.
starting at, right? I'm the person that, like, because I'm starting with you, I'm the starting price, right? And then only after I've been with you do we grow up from there.
Yeah.
Whereas, once we start to communicate, like, not communicate value, but communicate, like, what a better solution is, or what's the average solution, what's the most common solution, what is the right solution, right? The conversation in the buyer's mind happens completely differently.
Mm-hmm.
Because what the buyer ends up saying in their mind is, instead of going from bottom to top, right? Well, do I really need that? Do I really need that? Do I really need that? Like really pay attention to your thought process the next time you're looking at a website and they have the lowest, the mid tier, and the top tier. I promise you, what you will do when you're looking at that online page is you will look at the bottom, the basic tier, and you're like, cool, okay, I'm spending all this time looking at the basic tier, and then you're going to see, okay, well, what do I get from here to here? Oh, do I really need that? Oh, okay, do I have to have that? Like, can I be okay with what this is? Right? That is how we think. Whereas if
Mm-hmm.
we go from the top one and then bring ourselves down. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. Yeah, it's like, I don't want to scare them off. Well, guess what, right? If they're going to get a solution that they're not happy with, what do you think is going to be worse? Getting a client to buy the bottom tier solution and not be happy, or scaring them off early because this is actually what you need? And I wouldn't feel comfortable selling you anything less than that. If we sell from the top to the bottom, the conversation ends up happening completely different in our head. It's like we end up looking at that entire like gold level plan, and then we look at the silver and we're like, oh, well, can I do without that? Right? Like if this is what I'm getting, like, is it okay to go down? Is it okay to go down instead of is it okay to go up? Completely different mentality when we're looking at price. And we need to make sure that we're thinking about how do people think about this? Going from top to bottom, having that conversation early is like it actually makes you as a salesperson come across as transparent, as honest, and as someone who truly understands and believes the value that you're selling, that you're willing to communicate with me from day one that this is the value that we're going to be talking about. If you want something less, I will talk to you about this, but trust me, this is the better solution that you ultimately want to have.
I think when you frame it that way too, then it opens the doors to a conversation.
Mm,
Where if you just give them one price, and this is the one thing I found even with like when I've gone to buy stuff, if I get one price, I look for something to compare it against. And so if
yeah.
you just give me one price in that meeting, well, now I'm going to go look for competitors to compare that price. Where when you give me multiple prices and we start talking solutions where it feels
Yeah.
like it's customized, even if it's not,
Yeah.
now I'm part of that process and I'm custom picking. I'm like, yeah, no, I could go without that, or no, this is really more important, even though it's a package price.
Well, and I mean, and pricing is like one of those things. Yeah, it's a sensitive topic, but what we hear from salespeople is like, well, I don't want to scare somebody off with the like, with too high of a price, right?
Hmm.
I don't want them to hear the price and then they're not bought into the value. Well, guess what's more scary? Right? Getting somebody to like, buy in early on at a low price. And then now you're having to fight against yourself to communicate why what I told you you should buy at the very beginning isn't actually the right solution, right?
Hmm.
Like that's terrible, right? And number two, now you're fighting against yourself to try to communicate value. But I can guarantee you, I promise you, right? If you are meeting with a client, right, whether they are the decision maker or the influencer and something else at this, and we finally get to the pricing based conversation, like if you were to, let's say, Nick, you were shopping for software on behalf of our company, right?
Yeah.
Kim, I talked with so and so company. I'd be like, cool, what do you think of it? I really like the software. Cool. What is it going to cost? Well, it's going to cost 1,500 a month.
Hmm.
Okay, cool. Do you really think we need it? Do you think like, yeah, it's great. Okay, awesome. Like continue to meet, really find out, like build me a business case, tell me why and how much it's going to bring us into our business. And then you go away, it's been a month later. Nick, what's happening with that software? You're like, well, I finally met with the client, or sorry, the seller, and they told me now that what we need and our needs are going to be closer to 2,500 a month,
Yeah.
right? Oh my goodness, I would be irate. I would be so angry because I'm like, that salesperson has like wasted everyone's time
Yeah, I
because
built my
I'm the
whole
one
business case based on 1,500, and then, like, I have
you
you prep for 1,500, and then all of a sudden it's like you almost feel like you got you got stabbed in the back. You're like, well,
yeah.
now you wasted so much of my time. I put in all this effort. Now I just kind of want to walk away.
Well, it's true, right? Because if that's how somebody's going to treat you before you're a client, how are they going to treat you once you are the client? Right? Are they going to continuously communicate things that are like, well, we're going to tell you one thing, but then we're going to tell you something different. We're going to tell you one thing because I'm afraid to tell you the truth. Right?
Hmm.
I don't know if I would actually like feel good to ever work with a salesperson or a company that was afraid to tell me the truth, right?
Yeah.
Price is a piece of information. And if you are afraid of that piece of information, when will be a time when like you actually have to communicate with me? Right? When will be the time when like you tell me that like you mishandled our account, right? You double billed us. I don't know. Like there's all sorts of different things that happen. I've had my fair share of uncomfortable client conversations, right? Listen, we have
Yeah.
not served you the way you need to be served. And if you're afraid before I'm your client to give me bad information, I'll put that in quotes, right? Because I don't think pricing needs to be bad. I think
Hmm.
pricing is in the eyes of the beholder. And if your salespeople think that price is bad, go get new salespeople because price is a piece of information. And if they're afraid to give you a piece of information before you're a client, what's going to happen when you are the client? Right? What's going to like how are they going to communicate with you transparently and honestly and in a way that says, I value this relationship and I want to give you all the information that we need to.
Have you ever
Right?
worked with one of those salespeople that you can tell in their mind that it's unaffordable to them, and then they pass that on to you?
Oh, they stumble. They stumble with their words. They become very hesitant. One of the key words that actually, and people are going to pay attention to this from now on, is they'll use the word dollars. Right. Well, it's going to be $2,100, but we might be able to do it cheaper. Right. They immediately give you the but that doesn't mean that we're gonna have that for you. We have another little thing in here is like pricing is difficult in the conversation, especially if you're building it. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of conversations around that. I'm dealing with, a consultancy agency right now. We're doing some sales training for this consulting company, and one of the things that they say is like, "Well, Kim, all of our clients are different, right? It's not like we can just like, we're not a menu type of item." And I get it. There's lots of companies like that, but I'd like to believe that you have worked with enough companies to know that based on my size, my scope, the type of work that I'm having an initial conversation with you on, you're going to have a rough idea on what that's going to cost. And if you
Hmm.
don't have like at least a rough idea, give me something to work with. Right? You don't have to build in the first meeting or the second meeting the entire price based conversation. Like one of the things that we'll say is, if let's say I'm dealing with a company and we're doing sales training, right? We're
Yep.
doing a team sales training, and that can vary depending on how many companies, how many modules, how long are we like that. There's so many variants, right? So where do I start? I start at the high number. And I
Yep.
said, listen, if you were to train every single one of your employees, because what we know in our company is a one-off is way more expensive than a large quantity. Right.
Hmm.
If I had to do this at one time, this is the price. If I did it in large quantities, you're going to get a discount, right? This is the economies of scale, and many companies practice this. As a one-off, you're going to invest $5,400. Right? I use dollars, but like I'm using the example, right? You're going to invest 5,400 per person. Right? How many employees do you think you're going to have? Oh, we're going to have, 60 employees. We're going to have 100 employees go through this training, right?
Hmm.
Well, I can guarantee you, right? And I'll crunch some numbers right now, right? At 100 employees, we're not going to charge you 540,000, right? We will be far less than that. But and I want you to know that if we did just one person, or like we do this training and you still had another person, this is what it's going to invest, right? We're going to have a conversation around that. All right. So that we're still like, we're still understanding like what it's going to look like. Right. Even if you're having to build like an infrastructure, you're having to build a customized solution, what the average price is going to be for most clients. Right. Start there instead of, well, we start at this and we have all of these different options and then we build like this is, do you remember, and I'm going to age myself. Do you remember when Dell computers first came out and you would actually have to build your computer online?
Yep.
Right? You
They
had to
still
both
do
build
that.
it. You had to build your computer in person as well, right? But they had these modules, right? And you're like, okay, I'm going to take the base model and I'm going to add. And all of a sudden it was like two times the amount that
Three
you thought it
times.
was. Yeah. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. And so then we started taking things away, right?
Now
Oh,
that
that
you
was
bring
way
that
more
up, Kim, I just priced something on Dell that I need to run by.
expensive. Sponsored by Dell now.
One thing I thought would be worth bringing up is agents a lot of the time they shy away from that price because they don't want to scare people. But isn't that positioning as well? Because if your tech stack or your costs and what you provide starts at a certain point, you're going to work with customers that kind of expect to pay that. Like you said, the cost of doing business. So if wouldn't it be a red flag if it was too cheap?
Oh, of course. Of course. I know I've been in there, right? Where let's take the graphic designer example for instance, right? The only reason I went with her, even though it sounded really cheap, was that like, we had done other types of work in the past. And I was like, okay, like fair enough. Like, you know what? You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, right? We're in some type of partnership together. Let's do that. And so I hired this woman to do some graphic design for us. But when she told me the price originally, if I didn't have a relationship with her, I definitely wouldn't have gone with her because I've been like, that doesn't sound right, right? Like, what am I getting, right? There's the old adage, you get what you pay for. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, right? We associate value with how much investment we have to put into it, right? If you had a roll, like nobody would expect to spend money on a Rolex watch and have the thing like, break every 2 weeks, right? You would be like, I'm taking it back to them. But if you bought a $12
Yeah.
watch, right? You would be like, oh, okay, well, I got $12 worth of like time out
Yep.
of it. So that's all good.
Yep.
If you had a Rolex that was priced for $12, you'd be like, that looks like it's a knockoff, right? Even if it was real, right? You'd be like, nope, nope, not touching it, not touching it. Like, it's just it doesn't seem real. Nobody thinks like, oh, this is the best deal ever, right? What you're thinking to yourself is like, well, maybe it'll work like for $12 for a Rolex, right? Maybe I can fool a couple people that like, it's legit. So going in too low is also a deadly mistake, right? You have to have that pricing conversation. And I think, part of this is like, so then when do we need to have that pricing conversation? How soon should we have that pricing conversation?
First
Because
call.
first call, I would agree with that, right? I would
I
say
don't
if
think it
it's
has to
not,
be specific though. Like you don't have to have it like it's going to be, 100 and so, right to the dollar value, but I think they should know for that, your
yeah.
BAT
Yeah, absolutely, right?
qualification.
Budget authority, need, and timeline, right? And
Yeah.
part of that budget is if the client doesn't know, and let's be honest, most clients probably don't have an idea of how much they're going to be investing, but we need to have a financial based conversation. And if it's not at the first meeting, it definitely needs to be at the second meeting. And I have done this several times before where I've met with the client first time. Maybe we don't have the price conversation in the first meeting, but if they don't ask, right, by the time I get to the second meeting, and I say, like, what questions do you have for me? If they still haven't asked, I said, listen, the one thing we haven't discussed is budget,
Mhm.
right? Would you like to discuss that? Right. There's very few people who are gonna be like, no, 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 I'm not like, unless they truly don't want to buy at that point in time. But that goes back to the idea of I'm not going to talk about budget until I've sold on value. And if they don't want to talk about budget, they're truly not going to buy. But if they're interested in continuing to move forward, then that's a great time to talk about it. So listen, the one thing you haven't asked me is about the investment, right? Oh, yeah, yeah, we are really curious about that. Okay, great, right? Because like we should discuss this. I want to make sure that we're in the same realm. Price is a piece of information, right? So if I need to find out, let's say it's a budget, like maybe it's a package, maybe it's a multiples, a quantity. How many people are you going to be enrolling, right? How many people are we delivering this for? How many days are we delivering this for, right? How many kilometers of pipeline do you need? Like whatever it is, right? Let's find out a quantity. Let's crunch some numbers and then say like on the high end or like probably where we're looking at is this, we may land somewhere around this, but we won't know more until we continue to go forward, right? It is what we're talking about fair and reasonable, right? Give them sticker shock. They will always get sticker shock. And because it's a piece of information, we can continue the conversations. People look at price as the final piece. It's not. Price is part of a bigger picture. And if you're not willing to provide all the information, when will you? Right? Who has ever said, yes, I'm ready to buy the moment they hear something brand new?
Yeah.
No one.
And I don't need to know the price. It doesn't matter.
Right? Oh, you know what? Honestly, I have so much money, right? That like, like this is even like Elon Musk, right? He was just like, they're like, we can solve world hunger for $6 billion. He's like, cool, show me a plan. Oh, there's actually not really a plan, right? He's like,
I
He's
think
like,
it's
I
worth.
got the money. Just show me a plan, right? Oh, we don't actually have a plan, right? It's like, okay, well, then tell me what you can do. Like, what can you do for $6 billion? Oh, well, we really can't do anything. We just pulled the number out of our hat. Like, Elon Musk was like ready to sign them a check for $6 billion and they talked themselves out of the deal. They went in super high, thinking like this was the number, and then they couldn't like step up. Whereas if at least they had a plan, like he was there, right? That would be a dream situation for any of our professional salespeople out there. I think that would be a dream situation.
I just
Oh,
noticed that we're coming up to time. Did you want
we
to
are at
address
time.
anything quick before we go and direct everybody to the Q&A?
Yeah, I think the only other thing I want to say is to Vivian, who's written in here, right? How low can you go without losing value? Vivian, you're asking the wrong question, I think. I think the question is how high can you go and still have the conversation, right? Thinking about how low you can go undervalues yourself and the value that you're creating for your client. And if you're at a place where you're trying to ask yourself how much lower, how much lower, how much lower, right? I want to be like the guy who releases 6-minute abs, because the moment I release 6-minute abs, Nick, what are you going to do?
6-minute abs? Oh, it's way easier. I'm going to go figure out how much it costs, and that's what I'm going to go and do.
Yeah. And then you're trying to compete with me and you're going to like release 5-minute abs until the next person comes in like, well, they can do it in 5 minutes. I can do it in 4. Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to release like and you know, what was this? Like, this was the old joke, right? And if they don't get the results in 5 minutes, I'm going to give them the extra minute for free. Still 6-minute abs. Right. So don't ask yourself how low can you go. Sell on value. If you truly believe that you are a premium price and a premium value, sell on that value. And you'll be surprised with how many clients will go. Kristen's going to make 5-minute abs. Good job. Thank you, everybody. I hope to see you all next week. Yeah. Yeah.
Next week, and I'll just throw it here in the comments. There's a Zoom link. That's our private Q&A. We're going to jump over right now. So it's your place to go and ask him all your questions that are
come on
ready
in.
to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're going to do backstage. We'll see you all soon.
See
Bye-bye.
everyone on the other side. Bye.